Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Tech News Live. We're going to be talking about a couple different things today. Very excited. Mom, Dad, Grandma, appreciate you being in the room with me. And without further ado, let's jump right into today's topics. We're talking about EA going private for $55 billion, what this actually means to you, and who bought it. We'll talk a little bit about that. Meta partnered with Ray-Bans to launch some new sunglasses, which are actually pretty sick. They have a heads-up display, a little bit different, not just the creeper ones that have been around using on TikTok to pick up chicks. Xiaomi launched a new phone in China. Very sick indeed. Probably the reason why they're no longer allowed to sell here in the United States, because it might actually be a lot better than the iPhone. Well, just take a look at it. It is significantly better than the iPhone, in my opinion. Just right out of the gate, has a second screen on the back. Kind of like the highlight there. Second screens have been done before, but this one's a little bit different. PlayStation 5 Pro got an update, and it looks like some specs were leaked online, or someone leaked them anyways. And yeah, it looks like it's getting an update before it's even launched, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Last up, we have a story talking about the brains in jars that have been hooked up to AI. So pretty interesting stuff. It opens up the realm of possibilities for a lot of different medical experiments to be done in a way that's a little bit ethical. But when we're talking about brains in jars and AI, I think the line of ethics gets blurred pretty quickly. So we'll be talking about all that stuff today and more in today's episode of Tech News. Appreciate everyone being here. Again, Mom, Dad, Grandma, what is up? Without further ado, let's jump right into the first story today, which is EA going live for $55 billion. Now, if you didn't know, Electronic Arts, the publisher of FIFA, Madden, Apex, Legends, they just got bought out by the biggest gaming, and just got bought out in one of the biggest gaming deals ever, Now, what this means, or what looks like what happened is that EA went private for $55 billion. Who bought them? Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners. Now, I won't go too deep into the rabbit hole on who Saudi Arabia's public investment fund is and who they represent, but very interesting stuff. It looks like the CEO, Andrew Wilson, is going to be staying online with the company, and EA is no longer going to be publicly traded. So what does this really mean for gamers and for you, anyone listening here at this point? This is an end of an era, right? EA is one of the biggest independent gaming publishers ever. And because they're massive and they are publicly traded, they had quarterly reviews, right? They were in the public eye for better or for worse, okay? That's not going to happen anymore. There's not going to be any of those shareholder pressure, which could, so I'm going to kind of open it up to two different routes here. Could open up to some creative freedom from EA. So again, kind of a positive spin here. They don't have to worry about appeasing the public anymore. They're no longer held accountable by Wall Street. They're going to be separate. Again, could be a good thing in that they're no longer trying to meet deadlines that are being forced on them by the pressure of Wall Street to come up with something bigger, better to increase profits. But kind of the bad thing, kind of the way I'm kind of seeing it, and very more likely the way it's going to go is that doubling down on monetization. So what do I mean by that? Microtransactions can be raised. Or right now, let's just say that EA doubles microtransaction costs for every single franchise that they have. Okay, we would know that, and the stock would suffer because of that. Well, now they're not going to have that. Not going to have that holding them back. They're not going to have the pressure, like I said previously, of shareholders essentially looking over their shoulders and judging their movements. If they want to double down and make more money and be more greedy, they can. Plain and simple, they can. So that's kind of the way I see it's going to be going. Geopolitical influence and all that other stuff aside, $55 billion just change the rules for EA and for gaming in general, especially if this goes all the way through and it gets really bad. Best case scenario, new IP, some braver games, less rushing to get games out that aren't finished. Worst case is that every single franchise turns into like FIFA Ultimate Team, right? Where it's all microtransactions, pay to win. Could be very interesting. Next up, we have Meta's Ray-Ban collection partnership. Looks like they've done some really, really cool things. So Meta actually launched a new pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses with a heads-up display. Now, the difference between what they did before is that they just had like cameras in the glasses, and there was some communication with the app and stuff, but there wasn't as much nearly communication. This is AI embedded with a heads-up display in the glasses, in the lenses, So it's way different, and it could kind of change how we blend normal fashion, really, in all reality. I think this is their really good chance at wearable AI, I don't know if that makes sense to you. So they kind of launched two different things. One of them is like a neural band that comes with the glasses and partners with it so that you can interact with your hands, similar to kind of like I was showing on screen there. And yeah, this is definitely going to change some of the game here. To me and to you, it might sound pretty familiar because Google Glass tried this back in the day. It was back in 2013, but the tech back then was really different. It was really clunky. It didn't have the same vibe as this has. With the fashion statement of Ray-Ban and the brand of Ray-Ban, and Oakley has partnered with them as well. It changes the game a little bit. So it looks like kind of like they're looking to add an AI ecosystem with this. So it's not just going to stop here. We'll have to see what happens with that. But yeah, if they succeed where Google failed, it could be really the next big computing shift, wearable tech. It's like wearable AI now, as opposed to just wearable tech. We have smartphones, we have smart refrigerators, right? But now it's like AI stuff, and AI is being pushed everywhere. So, maybe no pulling out your phone for directions. You're just kind of tapping the side of your screen and seeing what happens. Could also mean that everyone around you has to live with the idea of being recorded. I guess that's something that's already happening now too. So, the privacy thing could be a thing, but that actually is what, in my opinion, and a lot of people say, killed Google Glass is those privacy concerns. It feels to me like deja vu with the shinier packaging. The difference is that AI might actually make this useful, so these glasses might still stick, and they weren't going to stick before. Truthfully, in my opinion, Meta hasn't really earned our trust. So I don't really know how I feel exactly about Meta having all that power. Again, going back to, would I wear them? Maybe, but if I didn't feel like I was, a walking Black Mirror episode, and it feels more normalized, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I don't know exactly how I feel about that. Next up, we have the Xiaomi 17 Pro Max. Now, why is this thing so cool, and what's the big deal about it? So Xiaomi is no longer sold here in the US, and there's a couple different reasons why. There was some scare of Xiaomi having China being the owner, the country where Xiaomi is made, having some kind of influence over our data and people using their phones to do stuff. Everything is basically a phone. The phone is basically your life, right? So getting a good insight into what's on your phone is a really good insight into American culture and all sorts of stuff. So the fear there was that Xiaomi was going to be using that data. And there was a chip scare, if I remember correctly. Again, that's a story for another time, but this is what's kind of cool, right? Because phones are really starting to blur together. There's like the same rectangles in every single device, every single manufacturer, same cameras, same specs. Now Xiaomi comes along and then says, let me just drop a bomb and say, what if your phone had two screens? But not just like two screens on both sides of the phone. So one screen on one side, one screen on the other side. Again, has been done before. I can't remember the manufacturer that had it launched at like CES, if I remember correctly. This was years ago. I think Linus Tech Tips talked about it. But different implementation rather. They launched the 17 Pro Max in China on paper. It's got all the flagship stuff. So I'll read through the specs. It's Snapdragon chip, powerful cameras, fast charging, all the same stuff that you would expect in some of the new iPhones, right? But kind of highlight is it's got an entire back screen, and it's like a little module. It's pretty sick. It's right tucked right next to the camera module, which is pretty sick. Now it's not huge, pretty functional though. You can check notifications, glance at time, view it as a viewfinder when you're taking selfies. Probably the main driver, and really, really good idea there. Basically, it's like stuff that you would just kind of like normally do. You didn't need a whole screen to do. They want you to handle that with the rear display. So what does this mean? Well, it looks like this is just classic Xiaomi being Xiaomi. They really like tossing in experimental features and hardware into the market and kind of seeing what sticks. Honestly, second screen isn't a brand new idea, right? We've seen it before. Motorola is doing it now, Motorola Razr. I had the Samsung Z Flip, great phone, but I don't know, it just seems a little bit different. And, they also have external displays and external widgets as well. So I don't know, it feels a tad bit different than this thing here, because it seems like the back display won't be taking up nearly as much battery power either, which again could totally lend a hand to this level of convenience that we really haven't experienced before. So I think Xiaomi's take on it is, why have to fold the phone to I have to fold the phone to have the convenience on of the secondary screen, right? So you can't buy, like I said previously, it's only sold in China. There's probably a good reason, because this would probably blow Apple out of the water. My understanding is it's significantly cheaper. Now, I couldn't get the exact price. I don't know why, but I saw like $600 for this bad boy. Again, I'm reporting that. I don't think that's entirely accurate. I'm just telling you from what I saw. I pulled up an article that said about $600 American, which, again, it really shows you why they're probably not allowed here to compete in the US. They would destroy Apple. Apple couldn't compete with that. So I respect the swing. Phones have been stuck in this like rinse and repeat cycle design for years. If this ends up being something to remember, like, just like it's a feature from back in the day, that's okay. I think kind of something important to think about is that, like, what happens in China a lot of times spreads to the rest of the world. Like, they break and then kind of like force a new version of whatever's coming out, a new version of tech. Bendable screens were first available in China years ago. So that whole thing is kind of like, it's not too new and exciting to them over there. They're figuring out a lot of stuff. And I would say, personally, don't be surprised if you see Samsung or Apple in a keynote in a couple years from now with a display on the back. That's all I'm saying, especially if it takes off. That'll be the really determining factor there. So if it takes off and there's a lot of utility for it, absolutely, I can see a lot of potential with the back screen there. I think it looks great. Okay. And last story for today is going to be about the tiny lab-grown brains being added, or AI being added to them. So if you didn't know this, scientists are literally growing these little tiny human-like brains in the lab. And now they're at the point where these mini brains might actually be able to learn using AI. We can kind of figure all this stuff out. So what are they called? Well, they're called organoids. They're clusters of brain cells that have grown from stem cells. Now, the labs are using them right now to study diseases and brain development. But Johns Hopkins just recently published in a study that they don't just fire off neurons. They're actually showing the building blocks of learning and memory. So this is getting really, really weird. But we're not just talking about like random clumps of tissue anymore. We're actually talking about like brain matter coming up with its own thoughts, I guess, or, being able to see information similar to like how we do and process information like we do as well. It's pretty big for science, right? Because we can test all sorts of drugs and study memory loss, run experiments that we could never really do on someone just sitting down in a chair over there. But again, kind of the kicker here is that we're really walking away from what it looks like to be like AI versus like cyborg versus real, we're kind of blurring those lines and we're getting to that weird ethical spot where, okay, sure, this isn't a live person being worked on, and we've discovered all sorts of stuff about, Alzheimer's or maybe some new drug that's come out recently. Problem is, in my opinion, is that what if the brain starts to feel things and remember things? That's kind of where we're at right now. We're at that really weird spot where we've put in AI as well, and kind of like hooked these things up to these AI systems, and it's like it's just being able to process a lot of information in a long time. Connected with AI, it kind of seems like it's almost like a living organism. Again, it's kind of how I feel. It's like a hybrid between biology meeting computing, and it's very, very interesting. For medicine, breakthrough, absolutely agree. I think it's an amazing scientific feat that we're even able to do this. Better models, faster cures. For society, I don't know. Little clumps of brain running around thinking for themselves. I mean, again, I hate to sound kind of weird about it, but like, what if they develop awareness, right? And they'd be directly tied into AI. I don't know. We've seen all. This is an Avengers movie. I mean, I'm pretty sure this is in Black Mirror somewhere. Either way, no guardrails, no rules at the moment for this kind of stuff. It's like the Frankenstein problem in real life. It seems to be we're going to need some kind of regulation on this stuff. I don't know if that's coming or if it's ever going to come, but I just know that it feels a little weird to have brains in jars doing kind of real things, if that makes sense. And since we're hooking up to AI, it's being able to compute things a little bit faster, and who knows? In the next couple of weeks, it might be something where I'm showing you guys the brains, I don't know, painting or something crazy. I don't know. I can see it happening. So Yeah, well, I don't see anything. Yeah, what's up, Leisha? How's it going? Appreciate you being here. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Again, we kind of go back to the point to where it's like, okay, what is the what is the boundary? What is the limit of us saying to like, okay, this thing starts computing, sending messages like, hey, stop, that kind of hurts. Do we stop because it kind of hurts? I mean, what if it remembers the last experiment, right? What if it says, hey, again, we're talking about just the brain kind of doing its thing. What if it said, hey, I remember what happened last time and I'm going to change the results and now you can no longer experiment on me accurately. Again, we're just talking kind of like what it could be, what could happen, but that's kind of what's going on. Those are the stories for today. That's kind of my feelings on it. If you enjoyed what you saw, please give the channel a like and consider subscribing. I'm going to be doing these every Monday. I'm going to try to do them Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but I like to make videos as well and come up with my own videos. So I'll be doing both of them, trying to feed the content engine and go from there. Appreciate everyone checking in today. If you enjoyed what you saw, please consider liking and subscribing. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.